It's a Monday, and we're back for the stream. How is it going, everybody? I am so happy to finally be back with you guys in the studio. For those who don't know, I actually was traveling to Phoenix over the weekend to attend Turning Point USA's America Fest. This was my fourth AmFest because we started doing AmFest in 2020, which is absolutely crazy to me. Did we start doing it in 2020 or did we start doing it in 2021? Now I can't remember. Either way, several years of going to America Fest with Turning Point USA. It was such a freaking blast being there. I got to see some of you guys in real life, which was awesome. But even though the conference is continuing through Tuesday, had to be back in the studio today for People of the Internet with Dave Rubin and, of course, our live stream this afternoon. I don't know about you guys, but I am having the wildest, most Monday of all time. Is it just because it's the last Monday until Christmas that like all of the Monday things have all just conglomerated to make Mondays the worst today? You guys might have followed along with the saga of my apartment, but my apartment flooded again over the weekend. So the floors and drywall that they took 6 weeks to repair since mid-November, that just finished all of the repairs last week, got ripped up again over the weekend. So I do not have a bedroom. I have no floors or walls in my bedroom again. And I came in on a red-eye flight overnight, so I'm really confused on what time it is and really need to go to sleep and take a nice long nap. Hence why I got my coffee in front of me for today's live stream. It's just a Monday in like a zillion different directions and reasons. I don't know if you guys feel that way as well. If so, Godspeed. That's just where we're at on the last Monday before Christmas. But on the bright side, it's the last Monday before Christmas, which is a huge W. Merry early Christmas. We're going to talk about the streaming schedule for what it looks like over the holidays at the end of the stream today. So stay tuned for all of that. But first and foremost, we got a lot to cover today in the meat and potatoes of the stream over a very bizarre fight some people are picking in the conservative/Republican world going into 2024 and why it is the hill I will die on. And that hill is hormonal birth control. I have talked about birth control at length over the last several months on the stream. I've been really transparent and very vulnerable with you guys about my experience with hormonal birth control, that I actually took birth control pills for about 10 years of my life. And we'll talk a little bit about my story and how it relates to all of this here in just a little bit. But why I quit, why I will never look back, and why the women of our generation are being intentionally duped to buy into hormonal birth control pills as this one-size-fits-all magic beans solution to whatever problem we are dealing with, but is actually intentionally poisoning our generation. It is not a winning issue. It should never be considered as a winning issue, but some Republicans are trying to make it a winning issue for the right moving forward. So it's going to get a little spicy. If you guys have birth control horror stories, please feel free to weigh in the chat throughout the stream today. That's what these live streams are all about. Me getting to know you, you getting to know me, and us exchanging these crazy things called ideas that nobody wants you to have in the public square anymore. But we're here to keep it alive right here on the stream every single day. Let's say hi to a couple people before we jump into this story because it is just totally crazy. Starting over on YouTube today because why not? Franklin, Righteous, and a Freckled Man are here. We've got Thomas watching, Marky, Jessica, and more. Over on Rumble, we've got Glock Fanboy and Chief kicking things off for us in the chat. Hi, World is Like a Zoo over on Getter and Marshall. And Throw Out Your Birth Control, good screen name for today's stream, is in the chat over on Getter. The Locals gang is here, including Alex watching live from AmFest. Alex, I'm glad I got to give you a big hug over the weekend. It was so fun to get to see you, but pay attention to the speakers. They're so awesome. You can watch this live stream later. And for all the rest of you that I got to see at AmFest, hello, and I'm glad to see all of you as well. On Instagrams, which we're still working out all of the formatting for, so please bear with us because it's going to be a little crazy until we figure out how to make this all look good while it also simultaneously is a horizontal stream. Regardless, we're glad you're here. Paul is watching from Hungary over on Instagram. Amelia is watching from Denver. We've got Michael watching, and Sonia is tuning in from Italy. BR Saunders is watching from Brisbane, Australia. Look at how awesome. We love to see our international community grow. Okay, chat. First things first, as we are starting the stream today, I want to know, drop it in the chat right now, how you personally feel about hormonal birth control. And when I say hormonal birth control, that's kind of a big umbrella term. But generally, we are talking about birth control pills and other forms of birth control that regulate or change how your hormones naturally function in your body. Those could be pills. That could be the little implant thing that you put in your arm. That could be the shot. That could be a certain type of IUD, etc. Have you had good experiences with birth control, or have you had horrible experiences with birth control? I'm dying to know. Drop it in the chat. J. Beermo David on Instagram says this should be abolished. Birth control should be abolished. Wild. We're weighing in very, very quickly. Throw out your birth control on Getter says it's slow release poison. Fascinating that you guys have very extreme opinions on this. Anna says it should be available to everyone on Instagram. Interesting. Crunchy Mother says Mirena, a certain type of birth control brand, made me go crazy. Fascinating. Meg says, I've never been on it, thank God. Baseball says population control is birth control. Glock Fanboy on Rumble says, I'm a dude, so believe it or not, birth control pills are coming for you. Next, they just approved the first ever male hormonal birth control, and it's hitting the market very, very, very soon. So if you think that you are immune to this conversation just because you are a man, think again. Birth control is coming for you as well. A freckled man said something very similar. I'm a man who never took it. So Marky says, I hate birth control. It made me moody. I feel frustrated when I take the pill. I've been on it for 10 years. I feel like it's made me depressed too. I'm getting off of it slowly. Ooh, interesting. Okay, so I'm glad I asked you guys this up front on the stream because it's fascinating to me that there are so many people older than us who still think the birth control pill is this like magic, wonderful frontier for women and for our health because maybe they didn't have the opportunity to take it as long as we did. Maybe it wasn't as culturally normal for them to take it as long as we did. But I want to start this entire conversation before diving into one very prominent Republican trying to make being pro-hormonal birth control the new winning issue for the Republican Party going into 2024. Before we jump into that specifically, I want to share a little bit of my story because I love demystifying some of this for people who might not have an intimate experience with hormonal birth control, who maybe can relate to my intimate experience with hormonal birth control. But my story is exceptionally common and is pretty much the exact same story of what most women my age have dealt with in some capacity. I'm 26, about to be 27 next spring, and this is a really, really common story, so you may have heard something along these lines before. I was first prescribed hormonal birth control pills when I was 15 years old. I was a sophomore in high school because, believe it or not, I had debilitating, horrible systemic acne as a teenager, which is a big problem in and of itself. Why that is happening, because that's also a relatively new problem in Western civilization. Probably has a whole lot to do with what's in our food. Seed oils. What? Who said that? I digress. But I was first prescribed hormonal birth control when I was 15 by my dermatologist because I tried every single prescription drug on the market, dermatologically speaking, for my systemic acne. And the only thing left that might have a saving grace at trying to save my pride, my image, and literally my skin was something called Accutane, which you guys may have heard of. It's a lot more popular now. At the time, this would have been about 2012, 2013. I was one of the first patients to be on Accutane once it became really widely available to teenagers. So Accutane mandated that you also take hormonal birth control pills at the exact same time because should you happen to find yourself pregnant while you were taking Accutane, it would cause horrible, horrible birth defects in the child. It would create all kinds of health issues for the mom. So the government stepped in and said, if a doctor decides to prescribe Accutane to their patients, they also must mandate that their patient be on 2 forms of birth control. And depending on who your doctor was, that could look like different things. Most doctors didn't believe teenagers when we said we're not having sex. I can just pledge abstinence as one of my forms of birth control pills. So they usually made you say, I will take hormonal birth control pills every single day and I'll use a condom or I'll use whatever. Or luckily my dermatologist was a family friend. So I was able to say my 2 forms of birth control were the pill and abstinence because I wasn't having sex at all. But they recommended that I get on this pill anyway because it would regulate my hormones. It would make my periods a lot better. It would get rid of so many mood swings and problems. Notice all of the quotation marks in my life. It would just be overall so good for me to take this magic medication that was going to change every single thing about myself. and my hormones and my body and my mental state and my physical state, etc. When you're 15 years old, your body is going through a zillion different changes and your mind is going through a zillion different changes as a woman. So it's not incredibly obvious when you start taking hormonal birth control how much it's fundamentally changing you, because you're still going through puberty, your brain's still figuring out how it's developing into adulthood, and everything is confusing anyway. But like millions of other women my age who have experienced the exact same story, long after I finished Accutane in about 5-6 months, which worked wonders for my skin, by the way, quite the glow up later on in life, if I must say, for my skin. Long after I had finished my rounds of Accutane, my dermatologist and every single other healthcare professional in my life kept suggesting that I stay on hormonal birth control pills, even if I wasn't sexually active, even if I wasn't using these pills as the intention that we think that they are often used for, to prevent pregnancy, but because it was just going to make my life as a woman so much better. You go, girl. You're going to be on top of the world if you keep taking these pills, because your period won't be so bad and you won't have really bad cramping anymore and your face won't break out. It's going to keep your skin clear after you've gone through literal torture in taking Accutane, and your mood swings won't be so bad, and you just won't have to worry about your hormones coming to affect you every month, because who wants to be hormonal, right? And so I kept getting this advice over and over and over again from every single medical professional in my life, from skin doctors to my primary care physicians, and even later on in life when I had a kidney surgery from a congenital defect that I didn't know much about when I was a child, but ended up requiring surgery a few Thanksgivings ago. Even the doctors assessing me for my kidney surgery were like, are you on birth control? Because you probably should be in your mid-20s. And that was when I had already quit. But I digress. Everybody wanted to keep me on this medication. And it really started to get me questioning, especially when I wasn't using these pills to prevent pregnancy and I wasn't using these pills while I was sexually active. Why is everybody so obsessed with trying to get my generation to stay on this medication for as long as humanly possible? And all of my girlfriends that I talked to, every single one of them was also taking hormonal birth control pills for some reason out there. They got really bad back pain once a month when they were on their cycle. They had really heavy periods and it was just really unfortunate. And so they felt like the only way that they could deal with that, with a hormonal imbalance in their body, was to take hormonal birth control pills. X, Y, Z. Skincare, sleep, bloating, weight gain, you name it, everything that we had experienced, the magic solution was supposed to be the once a day magic pill that would just solve everything. But we all started comparing notes and realized, I don't really like who I am on this stuff. I feel kind of like a crazy person. I feel really depressed. I feel really anxious. I don't really have a lot of desire to like meet boys and hang out with boys or have any sort of intimacy with boys. Like, this just doesn't really make me feel like a good version of myself. I constantly feel mid. I feel really emotionally neutral. I feel just like I'm not really interested in doing any of my hobbies anymore. Maybe we should quit. And so about 2.5-3 years ago, I decided to just throw it all in the trash and quit cold turkey. And I have never, ever looked back. Mostly because I read a book by a wonderful woman who is actually very vehemently politically anti a lot of the things that I would personally believe in, but is a professor in Texas named Dr. Sarah Hill. And she is incredibly well educated on this subject, but wrote a book called This Is Your Brain on Birth Control. It had been recommended to me by a couple of friends a few years ago, and so I happened to pick up a copy and literally finished the entire book in about a 2-hour sitting. I sat down, devoured the entire thing, ended up doing tons of interviews and stuff about it at the time, but it completely reshaped my own mentality of how I was living my life under this shadow and behind this veil that had been put up since I was 15 years old, that changed every single thing about myself. So, what were the contents of that book that really made me start to personally freak out? Well, it should go without saying, and I should have known this more than anyone, logically speaking, because my degrees are in biomedical sciences, so you'd think I was slightly more educated than the average Joe on how pharmaceuticals work, but they strategically leave these things out when they tell you all of the potential negative side effects of birth control. This should go without saying. Your hormones are not something that happen to you. Your hormones are you, and you are your hormones. And this book totally blew my mind when it came to thinking about this in a completely different way than how our culture and our society typically approaches birth control. We often talk about women getting too hormonal and, oh, it's her hormones that are just happening to her now once a month, once a week, when she has to go through some sort of physical change in her body. But in reality, your hormones apply to every single one of you watching the stream, whether you are a woman or a man, regardless of what your age is, etc., because they are you, and they regulate and change and impact every single thing about you. And when you start to regulate the two most important hormones, arguably in a woman's body, estrogen and progesterone, it's not like a switchboard where you can just flick the switch for can or can't get pregnant or can or can't release an egg during your ovulation cycle. When you turn all of the switches for estrogen or progesterone up or down, you're changing that for every single side effect potentially in your body, which obviously has widespread physical, emotional, mental side effects that doctors don't really talk a whole lot about, because while we know everything there is to know about physical side effects of birth control, which are scary enough, by the way, blood clots, strokes, extremely high risks of developing cancer later on in life, potential fertility issues down the line, etc., we don't know a whole lot when it comes to peer-reviewed, massively funded studies on the mental impacts and psychological impacts of birth control pills. But when you change your hormones, obviously you are changing your mental state. So this book, This Is Your Brain on Birth Control, totally flipped the switch for me in thinking about this in a whole different way, that my hormones are not something happening to me that I need to shut down. My hormones are me. And when I start playing with all the levers of how those hormones are supposed to be released and sufficiently broken down in my body, all of a sudden I'm playing with all of the levers of what makes me me. And this book broke down tons of different really interesting studies that are at least starting to ask these questions about mental side effects or personality or psychological side effects from long-term use of hormonal birth control. But as I was reading this book, I felt like I was reading the story of my life for the last decade. I was 24 at the time, so I'd been taking hormonal birth control pills pretty consistently since I was 15 years old for about 9 years. And I was reading that women who take hormonal birth control pills for a really long period of time often feel uninterested or pretty mid when it comes to their personal hobbies. They don't love to do the things that bring them a lot of joy anymore, but they're not miserable about it. They're just not excited about doing it either. That you don't want to listen to music as much anymore because there's a hormonal imbalance there, that you aren't seeking out joyful elation that often comes with listening to music. That you constantly feel on edge with anxiety because you're changing how your body responds to stress. You have hormones that help your body figure out how to respond to stress in a good or bad way when you have positive or negative stress. So you constantly just feel like, I don't know how I'm supposed to respond to this, which would explain years of clinical anxiety that I had been dealing with. Obviously, depression and suicide is very, very impactful as well when it comes to mental state of women taking hormonal birth control pills. But where it really got fascinating for me was that taking hormonal birth control pills and changing the hormone flow in your body actually changes who you are attracted to and what type of people you seek out in dating. Some studies have already found that women who take birth control pills are generally attracted to hyper-feminized men because we can't recognize a pheromone differential between men and women that are important evolutionarily speaking in creating a healthy offspring between a man and a woman of any mammalian species, by the way. So we naturally find ourselves gravitated towards pheromones that are more similar to ours, therefore more feminine men. There were studies starting to be done that when women were on birth control when they met their partner and then got married and then they quit birth control, they were no longer sexually attracted to their now husband and found this total crisis thrown into the wrench of their marriage. Like insane, mind-boggling side effects and problems later on down the line that were never disclosed to teenagers who started taking these pills and now have to deal with the impact years or decades or even many, many decades down the line. And I slammed this book closed and said, okay, that's it. I'm done. That afternoon, threw all of my birth control in the trash, and I will quite literally never look back. And the fascinating reality is I have done more and more and more research about the impact of birth control on the individual and society at large is this This is not a religious issue. This is not a political issue. This is an issue of science and humanity. And the more young women I am talking to who are roughly my age, whether they would agree with me religiously or politically or not at all, not even 1%, we all have almost exactly the same story. The vast majority of our generation was prescribed hormonal birth control to put a Band-Aid on a problem, whether that problem was acne or heavy period flow or really extreme period cramping, etc. The Band-Aid didn't actually fix the problem, but it masked all of the symptoms to make you think that it did. And all of a sudden, your life gets thrown into absolute chaos where you don't like who you are anymore. You're attracted to different types of people to date. And I wonder, by the way, just as a complete side note, how being attracted to more feminine men might have contributed directly to an increase of same-sex attraction in our generation, which is just a fascinating scientific question to be asking ourselves. That you lose interest in all of your hobbies and you just feel constantly on edge, like you don't know how to respond to stress, that you're super, super depressed, or even think about taking your own life, which is at an all-time high, by the way, and teenage girls' suicide rates for the first time ever in American history have now overtaken suicide rates of teenage boys, which I do not find coincidental at all. And I've found myself in situations on college campuses or on roundtable podcasts like the Whatever podcast, for example, talking to women who have nothing in common with me. We would not agree on anything, religiously or politically, but we all find ourselves in deep, coherent agreement that we felt like we were lied to about the birth control pill, that we felt like it was going to be this amazing savior of all of our problems, but that instead it caused infinite problems in our life and for our health that we probably will be dealing with indefinitely for the rest of our lives. We all have quit. We want nothing to do with this anymore, and we're tired of people trying to normalize actual slow release poison that many of us took for decades of our life. And now, most importantly, we're trying to educate other people that they don't have to go down this path, that there are infinite other solutions to the problems that they think birth control is going to end up saving. So myself, many other people in the conservative movement, but just young women my age in general, have taken to social media lately to blare the trumpets as loud as we possibly could about how duped we were about hormonal birth control and how the next generation doesn't have to be, which has obviously caused quite a firestorm on social media and in the political world. Many people are saying that we're intentionally trying to trick people so that they get stuck in pregnancies that they don't want. Not true at all. Some people say that we're just trying intentionally to get conservatives to lose because it's a losing issue to speak out about the devastating effects of hormonal birth control, which is not true at all. And some people are actually now, as of this week, trying to go out of their way to get the Republican Party and conservative movement at large to embrace with open arms hormonal birth control pills as supposedly a winning strategy for the 2024 election. When I read this headline, I wanted to punch myself in the face, but this story is absolutely fascinating to try to wrap your head around. So bear with me. We're going to dive right in. Again, Instagram, sorry if this ends up getting a little bit cropped for you guys. We are working on how we can create a better system moving forward. But this was published in Politico a few days ago before I left for the weekend for our conference with Turning Point USA. That contraception apparently is going to be the next winning issue, according to some conservative strategists telling this to the GOP. And the conservative strategists in mind are in particular this individual, Kellyanne Conway, who I learned a whole lot from when I interned at the White House in 2018 for the Trump administration. I think she has done phenomenal, wonderful things for the White House, for the federal government, for the Republican Party and the conservative movement at large. Do we agree on everything? No, but she is an absolute powerhouse woman. So I was really surprised when I'm reading this article that she is the one trying to get Republicans and conservatives to embrace birth control as much as humanly possible when she should know just how devastating it actually is. Let's read this article together because it absolutely just blew my mind. Kellyanne Conway is going to Capitol Hill on Wednesday with a message for Republicans: promote contraception or risk defeat in 2024. promote contraception or risk defeat in 2024? Don't take my word for it, by the way. I'm going to prove to you that everybody our age is embracing this anti-birth control pill trend. It's not just conservatives. Many, many, many liberals and leftists are doing the exact same thing. But like, what polling, what information, what evidence is remotely out there to suggest that embracing birth control pills is all of a sudden the winning strategy to avoid defeat in 2024? I have never heard a claim like this be made. So let's see where she's trying to come up with this. The former senior counselor and campaign manager for President Donald Trump is part of a group set to brief Republicans on how they might get ahead of Democrats' attacks that the GOP is anti-woman by talking more about promoting contraception and less about banning abortion. Well, let me just say this up front. If you remotely are trying to create a message and a narrative that you are pro-woman, the very last thing you should ever be doing is promoting the widespread use of slow-release poison that is quite literally destroying our bodies, our minds, and our psychological, emotional welfare. So in order to truly be pro-woman, you should be encouraging everyone as much as humanly possible to throw their hormonal birth control in the trash and never look back. And my generation seems to get this, regardless of political lines. But for whatever reason, people like Kellyanne Conway just have not. The visit comes as GOP presidential and congressional candidates have struggled to craft a salient message on the fallout from the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade. I actually do think that's true, but I don't think promoting poison is the answer to that. Trump himself has blamed anti-abortion groups and the strict laws that they support for electoral defeats in 2022 and 2023, and several prominent conservatives have implored Republicans in the post-Roe era to focus on issues such as contraception and maternal care to improve the perception of the GOP's approach to women's health, as Democrats have wielded the issue to notch several election wins. Let's scroll down a little bit. I think this is interesting. Meaningful action on contraception is argued to help Republicans with their own base and with Democrats dissatisfied with President Joe Biden. Sometimes I am a tinfoil hat person, so maybe I'm just reading way too much into this. But in what world is supporting hormonal birth control pandering to the Republican base? In what world? I genuinely cannot seek to wrap my head around something like that. Please find me 2% of the Republican base that would be fired up by the idea of handing out birth control pills to everyone. Interesting. I feel like the Miranda Cosgrove meme. Interesting. Let's see what Politico had to say further. You've got a fair number of Democrats saying that they want an alternative to Biden or Harris, or they may sit it out, said Kellyanne Conway. He's especially bleeding young voters. That is true. Who you would think would be animated and interested to hear about contraception. That is not true. And who are in the prime of their years and choosing to conceive or not to conceive. Interestingly, I think she's diagnosing the problem correctly. Young voters from the Democrat Party in particular cannot stand Joe Biden. All of the polling and the evidence out there suggests that they are very much over the idea of a going on 90-year-old trying to tell them that it's hip and cool for a Democrat to be president of the United States. It's why I personally think that Joe Biden is not going to be the nominee for the Democrat Party. There's a whole lot more that's going to come out between now and next November. Trust me. We'll just see how that all goes. And we've talked about that a zillion times on the stream, so go back and rewatch things for more commentary on that. But while the problem is diagnosed correctly, the solution could not be farther from what young people are actually looking for. Whether you are a conservative, whether you are a diehard Republican, whether you are a liberal, whether you are a leftist, I have found universal narration around hormonal birth control pills when it comes to Gen Z, especially on TikTok, and I'm going to show you some videos to prove that here in just a second, that we don't want birth control pills. We're tired of being medicated. We're tired of being lied to. We're tired of being poisoned. We're tired of being anxious, depressed, and suicidal. We're tired of being attracted to soy boys who don't actually contribute to a meaningful relationship to us. We're tired of feeling like we're inevitably going to get cancer in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. We're tired of the birth control narrative, regardless of political affiliation. So all of a sudden trying to pander to young voters by saying, here, take all the birth control, we love you, is absolutely a backfire and not a winning strategy whatsoever. Apparently, this huge coalition of women is going to Capitol Hill on Wednesday to try to lobby more Republicans to embrace pro-contraception narratives. So it's commissioned by the Independent Women's Voice and conducted by Kellyanne Conway's consulting firm, which is called KA Consulting. They have polling that shows overwhelming public support for policies that make contraception cheaper and more available. I don't know how that study was conducted, because I can tell you, at least from a Gen Z perspective, I don't know where they're getting that type of information. That's not what I am seeing. The message they plan to stress is that Republicans need to talk more about what they are for and less about what they oppose. I agree with that, generally speaking. So why don't we say we are for women's health, real women's health? Why don't we say we are for women's mental health, real women's mental health, rather than trying to embrace poison that's going to change literally every single thing about them and later on every single thing about society? Interesting. This is so very interesting. Later on in the article, Politico comes back to say that several different prominent conservative commentators, myself included, and organizations have really been outspoken about hormonal birth control pills. They say Democrats have also highlighted Justice Clarence Thomas's call for the High Court to reconsider the decades-old federal precedent guaranteeing the right to contraception, and conservative groups aligned with the GOP, including Turning Point USA, have urged women to stop taking birth control pills, claiming that they are actually abortifacients. Well, depending on the birth control pill, that can in fact be true. That is true information. And notice how they don't negate the factuality of that claim when they publish it in this Politico article. They're just trying to throw anything at the wall to see if it sticks. One person says, if conservatives really believe that this is what the pro-life world actually wants, it might help break through to them and explain to them that even among the most pro-life conservatives, you find this strong support for safe, modern, effective, and accessible contraception available for everyone. So is that actually true? Are young voters actually interested in promoting birth control? Are young voters really buying into all of these lies from the hyper fourth wave feminist movement that's telling them the only way that they can be successful is to never settle down, never get married, never ever think about having a kid, and to constantly be poisoning their bodies every single day? I don't think so, at least not in the experiences and the conversations that I am having on college campuses, on podcasts, all over the internet with all of my content here on the stream and short form on Instagram and TikTok. And I found a couple of really interesting clips to share with you from TikTok in particular, but want to take us back first to the experience that I had on the Whatever podcast in Santa Barbara, California. I'm not sure if you guys got to watch me live on the Whatever podcast in March. It was such a phenomenal experience sitting around this roundtable conversation with tons of other women who could not be more fundamentally different from myself. We got into all kinds of conversations about birth control, about feminism, about hookup culture, etc. But watch this really interesting interaction. I'm sitting across the table from a recovering sex addict, from a girl who's a pornography actress, from an OnlyFans content creator, people who could not have been more different from me. But listen to us diagnose just how broken culture promoting liberation for women has actually been. Ideal and unideal circumstances,
right?
For sure. But I guess just more generally, not pigeonholing ourselves in the single parent household conversation, I'm curious what all of you would say. Do you think that our generation is happy? Do you think that we're thriving? Do you think that this progressive society that we've spent so many decades trying to build a utopia to live in is working?
I don't think any like previous generation.
Every single head around the table, no. Are we happy? No. Every single head. OnlyFans content creators, recovering sex addicts, extremely different people from myself. Every single head around the table, no. We are not happy. And this obviously is like a tiny clip in the context of a much larger conversation, but it goes into birth control, it goes into hookup culture, it goes into an anti-marriage narrative. Let's keep watching.
We're either happy. I wouldn't say happy either. Like, obviously, Gen Z's like hookup culture, blah blah blah, they're so blindsided by that, but it's because it's just like occupying them. Like living in a college town, living here in Isla Vista, I go out, I see people have meaningless hookups, all this stuff. But to them, it just like, that's what college to them is about. And that is
because that's what we've strategically lied to people to believe.
Kind of like ingrained into their minds from previous generations of people too.
Oh, of course, there's ads there. So anyway, this is just so fascinating to me that we started talking about the really important conversations here when it came to everything: birth control, marriage, hookup culture, etc. And all of these women who you would think would I'm wearing the same shirt as I am in the whatever podcast. I just noticed that your girl is an outfit repeater. Thanks, Lizzie McGuire, for teaching me that important terminology there. But you'd think that these girls would fundamentally be disagreeing with me on everything, and yet they weren't, even as liberal and leftist women. So how do we stop it?
We can't.
Yeah, I want to have faith that we can like do a drastic turnaround, but I don't think it is. The internet in itself, there's so much privacy of what somebody could do on their phone anyway, that like, I think we're too far gone, honestly.
I also genuinely believe that people don't care anymore.
People don't care anymore. Interesting. What did I just say about one of the key hallmark characteristics of birth control pills with young women? It makes you not care about your hobbies, not care about your intimacy, not care about your own mental health, because it messes with your stress response so that you can't care. So all of these things obviously are so intimately connected. And this whatever podcast episode, by the way, just for your own reference, is 4 hours and 51 minutes long. It was so fun to sit down and do all of it. But if you guys haven't watched the whole thing, please feel free to do so. Obviously, we're not going to cover that here on the stream live right now. But there were countless opportunities where all of these women around the table start shaking their head. Yes, everyone's miserable. Yes, we start talking about birth control at one point, and I can't find the exact timestamp, so you'll have to go find it for yourself. But every single one of them said, yes, I just quit my birth control within the last year, or I'm miserable on my birth control and I want to throw it out, but I don't really know how to quit because there's nobody talking about how to quit. This is everywhere. There is a universal generational experience for young women right now where we feel and we recognize that society is broken, that we have been lied to, that we have been disillusioned, that we have been set up for a lifestyle that is not fulfilling, not joyful, not healthy, and not in our own best interests. Of course, we don't necessarily know where to go from there, and so I think that's up to the challenge of really bold and encouraging people who are willing to inspire and uplift Gen Z instead of point the finger and say, it's your own fault that you're in this horrible situation, because somebody had to raise us to get to this situation. And I hope that people like me are contributing meaningfully to those conversations. But the Whatever podcast is not in isolation either. I am seeing videos everywhere, particularly on this issue of birth control, where people are starting to get it. People are waking up and the switch is flipping to realize I have been lied to. This was not a good experience. And no place has been better at exposing all of that, in my opinion, than TikTok. So I picked 5 videos for you to see, but these are everywhere. If you just type in birth control in the TikTok search bar, you can watch literally billions of videos exactly like this. Let's just take a look at a few.
Women that are younger, in their teens and in high school, that are being put on birth control, what is happening to their brain?
If you give hormonal birth control to a grown-up, we know from research, for example, that it's associated with increased risk of sexual dysfunction.
Not wrong.
Right. And that's presumably because of this synthetic hormonal milieu that's created by these pills, right, which keeps estrogen levels really low. But when we're talking about young girls as 19 and younger, you still have a lot of brain development that's going on. And when you are experiencing post-pubertal brain development, all of that remodeling that goes on after puberty is something that's coordinated by your sex hormones.
What did I just say? Your hormones are not something that happen to you. Your hormones are you. So when you're completely changing how your brain is structured with hormone release and development, of course you're changing every single thing about yourself too.
Research that has been done is beginning to point fingers at a possible link between adolescent birth control pill use and then a greater risk of developing major depressive disorder across your lifetime, even after you're off of hormonal birth control.
So I see videos and interviews like that all the time, particularly on health-oriented podcasts and wellness podcasts, which are super, super popular right now, with clips going very viral on TikTok, especially for our generation. And as the whole like wellness and self-care craze is coming onto the scene, promoting a healthier diet, promoting exercising, I'm seeing a lot of this anti-birth control messaging because people are starting to realize if I truly want to embrace holistic wellness for my body, I can't be poisoning myself every single day. Then there are lots of other videos about people's personal testimonies. And some of these videos had some copyrighted music, so I'm going to talk over them so that we don't get copyrighted. But these personal testimonies, again, mirror exactly what my own personal experience looked like and is sadly the common story for millions of other women our age every single day. This girl says birth control doesn't mess you up that bad. And these are pictures of her from before she started taking birth control. That's how this shirt used to fit me. And this is what she looks like now after only a few months of taking birth control. It completely changed her metabolism. And in the caption of this video, she explained that every single thing about her physical and mental health had changed by taking hormonal birth control pills.
Welcome back to 3 Things Your Doctor Probably Didn't Tell You About Birth Control, Part 2, Sex Edition. Most women will go on the pill so that they can enjoy sex more without the risk of getting pregnant. But it can actually negatively affect your sex life.
True, so true, could not be more true.
Studies show that some types of birth control can actually decrease your sex drive. They can cause low libido, make you not want to have sex, as well as lessen the satisfaction that you have during sex.
Which totally makes sense because, say it with me everybody, your hormones do not happen to you. Your hormones are you. You cannot just pick and choose what type of estrogen regulation or what type of progesterone regulation you're trying to manipulate in a woman's body. If you're manipulating it at all, you're manipulating all of it, which will of course impact your sexual drive and your sexual satisfaction.
Number 2, birth control can cause vaginal dryness. This can cause discomfort, pain, and even bleeding during sex. And number 3, and this one is wild. Some studies show that birth control actually affects your taste in men.
What did I say? Gen Z is waking up, people. What did I tell you from the book just a few minutes ago? That it makes you attracted to more feminine men and less masculine men. Let's see what she has to say.
And that once you're off of birth control, your taste in men can shift. Okay, hear me out with this one. There's something called the major histocompatibility complex. This is a scent that men give off that tell women about their genes.
Which is pheromones. That's another word for it, pheromones.
Subconsciously, of course. Primitively. Women are more often attracted to men who have a dissimilar MHC than they have themselves. Scientists say that this is because it helps with the survival of the offspring.
That's always been true, evolutionarily speaking, for all mammal species, right? The pheromones that you have indicate your genetic makeup, and the pheromones that your partner has indicates their genetic makeup. So like the natural scent, the natural like aura, but aura is not the right word because an aura is something that you see. Scent is probably the right word, of somebody that's going to be your partner. If that is attractive, if it's a good smell to you, that indicates that they have different genetic makeup than you do, which will increase the immune system and genetic makeup and chances of survival of your offspring. But essentially, you go nose blind, to use the phrase from all of the commercials, the Febreze commercials, when you're regulating your hormones, to the point that you can't recognize pheromones that are compatible with yours to create healthier offspring in your children.
And that you're less likely to be a relative of a person because similar MHCs, you're more likely to be relatives. But when you're on birth control, your body thinks that it's pregnant, so it's not looking to procreate. Therefore, if you get into a relationship with someone that has a similar MHC than you, when you go off birth control, this can cause a lot of problems.
Obviously.
You may not find your partner attractive anymore, or you may be attractive to somebody else because they have a dissimilar MHC. Isn't that crazy?
All right.
Yes, it is crazy. It's absolutely insane. I'm seeing a lot of comments pop up in our chat, so I want to pause. We have 2 more videos to react to from TikTok, but I want to pause the videos really quick to just share with you what I'm seeing come through because I think this is fascinating. Jack Murphy on Instagram says, I tried only 2 kinds of birth control. One gave me a period for 2 weeks straight, not exaggerating. The second one gave me horrible migraines, and I never had migraines before. I, too, struggled with migraines throughout all of my birth control experience through high school and college to the point that I needed a prescription migraine medication from the doctor. It was so unbelievably bad, completely debilitating, would like leave me in my bed because I couldn't see light or experience sound. Like I literally felt like I was just going to throw up all the time when I experienced migraines like this. So I completely can relate to you on that, Jack Murphy. Estelle says, I cried for days at a time. I was so depressed and I had absolutely no sex drive. This is so sad to be reading these from all of the time, like all of these people. It's just so unbelievably sad because this is the normal experience. Liz says, birth control destroyed me. I now have PCOS. And there are several girls here in our chat on Instagram saying that you developed PCOS because you started taking birth control, which is ironic because doctors will try to tell you that birth control is going to help you avoid getting PCOS. If you don't know what that stands for, by the way, that's polycystic ovarian syndrome. It's a very, very debilitating condition that women deal with, and it's really sad that people are developing this just because they are taking this medication that changes their hormones electively. You don't need to take this medication. Nicole Nikoff time says, tried birth control once when I was 18 and noticed I felt crazy, so got off of it and have never used it again, and I'm 30. Yeah, you feel like a crazy person, and everybody likes to joke, my girlfriend went crazy. But what if you actually did go crazy intentionally because you started poisoning yourself? This is insane, and it makes me so sad that society is trying to tell us not to talk about any of this. If we're just open and honest about our experiences here, of course we're going to be able to positively influence others to not make these decisions or not have to make these decisions moving forward. Leah has a great point in our chat right now, and I love it. She says, I'm not going to have sex at all until marriage. I think that's the way it's supposed to be. When you're reading all of these things and you're hearing these horror stories, of course, that's the natural inclination that you're going to have because that's how sex was supposed to be designed, right? You shouldn't need to be poisoning yourself to try to limit the impact of what sexual activity inevitably does lead to, and that's procreation. Tony says, why even take pills? That's not what the universe intended. Exactly. 100%. And the more we're willing to be transparent and vulnerable about our experiences taking this elective medication that honestly we shouldn't even be calling medication, we should be calling poison because that's exactly what it is. The more we can be vulnerable and honest about our experiences doing that, the more I hope the truth will come out for people who never got a chance to hear the truth ourselves to be able to pass that on to the next generation. Okay, a couple more videos, and these ones hit really hard.
This is honestly the last thing I want to fucking talk about, but if I can save a girl from going through this, then it's worth it. So get ready with me for my, 5th doctor's appointment because of this reason.
5th doctor's appointment because her body has been ruined forever by hormonal birth control.
I got on birth control for 3 years without doing any sort of research, and it completely...
None of us do. And you don't think that you have to do any research, right? Because you can trust your doctor. You can trust these healthcare professionals that are telling you, yeah, there's potential really bad side effects, but it's never going to happen to you. Trust me, it's never happened to any one of my patients. It's super, super rare that something like this happens. So don't you even worry about it. It's potentially a problem, but it's never going to impact you. So you just blindly say, yeah, okay. And let's be honest, how many of us actually read the little inserts in our pharmaceutical bags that we take home that list out all of the potential side effects? We don't know. None of us actually do the research. And now you can just get birth control without a prescription from an app on your phone or online or over the counter in some situations. So it's getting easier and easier and easier to not have to do any research about this stuff.
Ruined my body long term. Now I know I'm gonna get dumbasses in the comments. I know I'm not a doctor, and I know everybody's body reacts differently. Sorry, I hate when dumbass people comment dumbass shit like it's not common sense. But this was my experience being on Nexplanon, which is the thing in your
Nexplanon are those little implants. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Nexplanon, but it's like this little tiny, it almost looks like a Well, this is going to make me really sound nerdy, so just bear with me. If you've ever taken chemistry and you have to put the little the magnetic spinners in your beaker, that's kind of what it looks like. It's like this little plastic pill looking thing, and they put it in your arm. It's this little implant, and it's gross because you can like feel it in your arm. I had several friends get the Nexplanon implant, and they hated what it did to their body.
Still have a scar from it, if you can see that. I've had it out for over a year now, and I'm still dealing with the repercussions of it. So the side effects while I was on it were completely terrible. Depression, anxiety, panic attacks.
Sounds familiar with what we were just talking about.
Literally no interest in intimacy whatsoever.
Completely decreased sex drive and no interest in doing anything that's going to make me happy. Fascinating.
Which literally defeats the point of having weight gain. And I don't mean like an extra 10 pounds, I mean like an extra 30. Birth control also makes it extremely difficult to build muscle, so that was fun going to the gym for years and seeing absolutely no progress until I got off. That was really sexy. I did have no period the entire time that I was on it though, and
also a very common thing, and so you kind of trick yourself into thinking, well, if I don't have to have a period, maybe this is good because we've treated periods as this like worst thing ever that can happen to you. But again, your body is supposed to have a period every month. The fact that your body is not should be a massive red flag to anyone and everyone. And yet we don't think of it as a red flag.
Might be like, oh my god, that's so nice, that's a good thing. That cannot be fucking healthy. Like, it was fun, don't get me wrong, but like, that cannot be healthy. That can't be good for you.
No, it cannot. It absolutely cannot.
It became very clear that it wasn't good for me. Getting off of it came with even more concerning side effects. So if you're on birth control right now and you don't have any side effects, be careful when you get off of it. Completely screwed up my hormones. My hormones are so insanely terrible now. If only y'all knew like half of the side effects that I have. For one, my body clings to fat like there's no tomorrow.
Same problem that I have struggled with for a very long time. It becomes really difficult to build a lot of muscle and to shed body fat when you've taken these pills for a very long time. Oop, sorry. Women. Now, of course, I ruined it. I messed up.
I have an appointment with my uncle today because he's a doctor. He's gonna do hormone tests on me. He's gonna figure out and get to the bottom of what the hell's wrong with me. Now, am I scared to tell my uncle that my are leaking? Yeah. But it's like, I'm so desperate now. I've tried everything. I started taking a vitamin B6 supplement to balance out my hormones. And if I wasn't so stupid when I was 18 and just got this birth control without knowing anything about it, literally the side effects say that things like this can happen long.
Yes, they do. The side effects do say that things like this can happen long term. But when you're talking to a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old, or in her case, an 18-year-old, how often are you actually doing the research, or are your parents actually doing the research? If the expert is telling you this is something safe to use.
Term. Like, there are girls that have PCOS from this shit. I'm so scared that that is what it is. There's literally so many different options of birth control that wouldn't have completely ruined my body, that are non-hormonal and don't fuck with your hormones. I was just a dumb 18-year-old that's like, I don't want to get pregnant and I also don't want to take a pill every day, so I'm gonna do this. Not knowing that I was gonna be ruining my body for literally the next like 5 years. Actually, I don't even know if this shit's like gonna be fixed ever, so it could be permanent. I'm not saying don't get on birth control because y'all ain't about to get fucking pregnant and blame it on me. But I am saying to make sure you do research before you put anything in your body, especially in your fucking arm. It's fucking embarrassing that I can't lose fat no matter what I do. It's fucking embarrassing that I have like basically no drive for intimacy. And it's embarrassing that my boobs freaking leak when I'm not pregnant at all. Especially when every doctor that you've been to is like gaslighting you into getting back onto it for money and trying to convince you that nothing's wrong with you when you so clearly know that something is insanely wrong with your body. I'm just like hoping and praying that my uncle can figure out what exactly is wrong and how I can fix it, and that it's even fixable, and that I can even have kids if I want to.
Yep.
Because it is so terrifying when like your body's ruined and you know that it's your fault. You fully did this to it. So many new insecurities just stem from the effects of this fucking birth control. Also, lip plumper is Scranted Beauty. Just watch this. One second. Like, are you kidding?
Classic. This girl is such a TikToker. Again, we could not be more fundamentally different, me and this girl, right? But how eerie that even though we are fundamentally different people, it's almost the exact same story for all of these Gen Z women that were prescribed this offhandedly by their doctors as some sort of magic solution to something that they were dealing with. And then you know something's wrong and you start bringing it up, but then you just get gaslit by everybody else in your life to believe that you're the crazy one. I love that people who could not be more different from myself are starting to post about this all over the internet to at least be vulnerable and be honest about what this experience actually looks like. We got one more video to show you guys.
I'll tag it below if you want to go buy it, because this is the only lip plumper that works for me. Anyway, my uncle's office is like 45 minutes away from me, and I'm like terrified of driving on the highway that I have to drive on, so that's gonna be really cute too. But yeah, wish me luck. Hopefully they find something and can help me. I love you, Hobknockers, and do your research, please. You can save yourself so much trouble.
All right, this one, again, had copyrighted music, so I got to talk over it. But this girl is literally cutting up her birth control pills and throwing them in the trash because she said, these silly little pills have literally ruined me as a person. And that video has millions of views. There are comments everywhere with the exact same stories of people who are commenting that they got cancer, they had a stroke, they had massive blood clots, they ended up getting PCOS, they were super depressed or suicidal or anxious. Literally thousands upon thousands upon thousands of comments on this video of literally these silly little pills have ruined me as a person. So I don't really know where this idea or this narrative is coming from that promoting slow release poison for women is all of a sudden a winning issue for the Republican Party or a winning issue for conservatives like Kellyanne Conway would like for you to believe that it is. But I'm just telling you, every single thing that I am seeing on the internet is anti-birth control. Every single conversation I've had at very pro-life events on college campuses with Students for Life and Kristen Hawkins, for example, where we start talking about birth control, kids that were previously screaming in my face on a college campus about abortion will completely soften their tone and say, oh yeah, birth control poisoned me. I just threw it away. I am seeing this everywhere. And if there is a hill to die on in the issue of contraceptives and when it comes from a position of women's health, the idea that it's progressive or empowering or uplifting or somehow healthy to be poisoning an entire generation of young women and then gaslighting them that they're making up all of the negative side effects about this, that is an idea and a hill that we should be willing to die on, like truly. And I love that more and more people are willing to be outspoken and vulnerable and honest about their experiences about this, but it cannot stop with the people who have already said something. Tons of you have dropped all of these stories in my live chat on all of the different platforms that we're on right now, YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, Getter, Instagram, and Locals. Every single one of you should go out of your way to tell the people in your own community, your friends, your cousins, your sisters, your neighbors, do not do this to yourself. You don't have to make the mistakes that I made. And that's not coming from a place of wanting to limit women's freedom. That's not coming from a place of wanting women to be unhealthy. That's not coming from a place of wanting to control women's bodies. This is about us being truly progressive, truly empowering, truly healthy for the next generation of women who deserve to know better and deserve to know more than we had the opportunity to know. Period. Full stop. You guys, I hope you learned something fun from this. Go buy this book. This is Your Brain on Birth Control. I've read it probably 10 times up to this point. I learned something new every single time. You can just get it on Amazon or anywhere else that you happen to buy books. I hope that you are at least interested to do a little bit more of your own research when it comes to the impact that hormonal birth control pills have had on our generation. If any of you have your own personal story about what that has looked like for you, please feel free to send it to me on Instagram, DMs, or via email, or anywhere else that you can get in contact with me. I love helping you guys figure out how to navigate a way to quit, because a lot of people don't realize the easiest ways that they can do that. So I'm always here as a resource for all of you guys. And especially if you are new to our stream today, especially all of you on Instagram, because streaming is new to Instagram, thank you so much for joining us and contributing something in our live chat. I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor of today's stream before we jump over to Locals for our post-stream Q&A, and that's our amazing friends over at Nori. I've talked about them quite often lately, but I think this is a great stream for us to highlight the amazing work that they are doing. Nori is providing the most accessible and clean and made in the USA gut microbiome products on the market. They are an incredible pro-freedom, pro-family, pro-life company that I'm super excited to be working with, and they create specific supplements and vitamins and all kinds of stuff that you can take to make sure that you are feeling your best all of the time with 100% clean ingredients that are all made right here in our country. They have women's specific products, they have men's specific products, but personally my absolute favorite from them is their signature Stay Well, which works a lot like a packet of Emergency. You just put it into some water, shake it all up, and drink away, and it simultaneously promotes health in your gut microbiome to help detox your body and to support your immune system. If you travel a lot, most of us are getting on airplanes this week, Stay Well will absolutely help you stay well. See what they did there? While you're on the go, traveling home for the holidays or anywhere else that you guys have to go. You can check them out using the link that I just dropped in our live chat, nori.com, and use code Isabel20, ISABEL20, for a discount on your order. Do me a huge favor as we're transitioning out of the stream, and like this stream if you haven't already. That could look like a little heart button or a thumbs up depending on where you're watching, and most importantly, smash that follow or subscribe button on any channel that you happen to be active on right now. We are a totally independent stream, meaning it is just me, a team of one, in the spare bedroom of my apartment. No multi-million-dollar media budget is behind this. We don't script anything. Nothing is inauthentic around here. I'm just a girl who wants to try to tell the truth to our generation in any way that she can here in my own house. So help us to continue to grow all of these channels one day and one person at a time. It is so great to be back with you for the stream. We are going to be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, and we have very normal streaming throughout the rest of the week. Next week, we are taking off for the stream. All of you guys should be taking time to get away from your computers in any capacity possible for Christmas Eve, for Christmas, and we are back around New Year's. So I'll give you guys a very more specific schedule for what that looks like towards the end of this week, but wanted to give you a bit of a heads up that this week is normal, next week is not. All right, let's jump over to Locals using the link that I am dropping right now in our live chat. For those that don't know, Locals is our very tight-knit, more intimate community where you guys get to know me a little bit better and I get to know you a little bit better. We're doing some really exciting giveaways and meetups from Locals in the next couple of weeks, and we'd love for you guys to participate in all of that. But in addition, every day after the stream, we do a fun Locals-only post-game show, and would love to see you guys join us over there using the link I just dropped in our chat. YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, Getter, and Instagram. We're back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. Locals, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.